Welcome to the Mitre Aff the Puss podcast, a new podcast starting here on YouTube, all discussing all things Scottish football. You'll be joined by me, Greg Williamson, and my co-hosts are Ross Arnott and Jay Lewis.
All right.
Now, we will be discussing all things Scottish football, and obviously Scottish football is on standby at the moment, as every other football league on the planet, due to the COVID-19 outbreak that has ravaged the world, unfortunately. But we're going to discuss a couple issues that have come up, talking about league positions and what we should be doing about resuming the footballing programme. So, over to you guys.
Right, so we're kind of wanting to work out what's going to happen to the leagues due to the outbreak. Obviously, we know the league can't continue. A lot of lower league clubs have expressed concern over, playing the rest of the games, contracts, etc. Running out in late May, early June. So extending the league might not be possible. So we've got a few different scenarios that could happen. The Scottish League has outlined this kind of main criteria. The first one being voiding the league. So this just being cancel the league as it is and restart fresh next season. What do you guys think?
I don't see us cancelling the league and starting fresh. Obviously, as I'm a Dun United fan myself, we are currently sitting 14 points clear at the top of the Championship. We've grafted so hard this season, making important signings, spending a lot of money to try and get ourselves back to the position where we think we belong. For us to then get it cancelled and not being able to maybe replicate the same form, maybe even losing players due to the transfer window if there's going to be a newly formed one, because this could spring up. I don't think it would be wise. I think there'd be a lot of uproar.
I don't think it's necessarily fair for all these teams, especially for teams like Dundee United and Celtic. I'm not saying hand them the title, but they've worked and they've got to the point where they are. You can't just stop the league and say, well, that's it. It's not fair, especially to all the teams. And plus, there's teams fighting for relegation and teams fighting for promotion in lower leagues. Mm-hmm. If they could be getting promoted to higher leagues to get a better standard of football, in that aspect, it's not fair to take that opportunity away from lower teams, as well as denying teams like Dundee United a chance to get back to where they once were. I think in terms of cancelling the league, I don't see any way that it can be done without some sort of uproar. And I think that's where the problem would come in.
Because you look across the leagues, you see Scottish Premiership, Celtic 80 points, closest rivals Rangers on 67, 13-point gap. In the Championship, Dundee United on 59, Inverness on 45, 14-point gap. League One's a bit different, we'll get onto that later. And Scottish League 2, you've got Cove Rangers on 68, Edinburgh on 55. So a minimum of 13 points is here. Obviously, the Championship's got 14 with Dundee United. And then also looking down at the playoff spots, Edinburgh City are sitting second on 55, the nearest rival Elgin on 43. So is it fair that Edinburgh City have worked hard to get to second and then not have the opportunity to get up in League One next season? That's something needs to be addressed and maybe not the fairest way of doing things. Another thing that came up about voiding the league is prize money and sponsorships. What happens if, say, Raith Rovers finish top of the league and the league's voided? Do they get the prize money for finishing top? Do the sponsors want to claim their sponsorship money for next season? And that could be a lot of money coming at the club. I don't know if it's necessarily fair that teams work hard and get to this point and are denied this money that they probably earned.
Especially when money like this can mean a lot to clubs like these. It's not like obviously your Celtics and your Rangers who have got money in the bank, and this doesn't really affect them that much. But to clubs like you're saying, like Cove Rangers and Raith Rovers and stuff, these prize money will affect them massively and help them in all this, every shape of the way. And I think it's not fair to deny them, deny them that money because of the COVID-19 outbreak. I think this money can be sometimes like pennies to clubs like Celtic, but to clubs like Raith Rovers and Falkirk and stuff like that, any prize money that they get means a lot.
You look at the Scottish Premiership here and going back to the top of the leagues, as it stands, the Celtic win the Betfred Cup, the fourth place will be entered in a European competition. So you're talking Motherwell and Aberdeen have a sizable gap over Fifth and Livingston. So you're pretty much saying that Motherwell and Aberdeen will be in Europe next season, and to then cancel the league and then not give them the prize money for getting into Europe. That's massive.
How would you work out that opportunity anyway for the Europe next season if you take into that account, like clubs trying to get into Europe, if they have the opportunity to get, like Aberdeen and Motherwell haven't been in Europe in years. If they get that opportunity to get into Europe and then they cancel the league, that's not only they're not getting in Europe, but how are they going to sort out the European competitions for next year? They're just not going to have it. Like, how would they work that out?
Well, I mean, going on from what you are saying, football's a business. Obviously, we love it as a sport, and we don't see it as that way as fans. But realistically, you look at it, every football team works like a business. They have a structure, a framework of making their money, and it filters through into different areas, such as academy work and staff, kits, and sponsors. Now, looking at teams like Dun United, who were previously in a lot of debt if it wasn't for investors. If we didn't have those investors and say we were in the same position as we are now, clubs, like businesses, if they're inactive for so long, still paying staff, still they're not making any revenue, will start to crumble and go into administration. And that's the big worry. Obviously, there's no government grants to pull us out of, well, not that I'm aware of, pull us out of administration. So, for example, Rangers, now we were saying they're a big money team and they've spent a lot of money since coming back up and they're not in financial security. The only club that I can see that are safe is your Celtic, is your Motherwell, is your Aberdeen, probably your Dun United. Maybe not so much Aberdeen, but it is the lower clubs like you were saying, who have small fan bases. Going up in the leagues is massive for travelling, just revenue in general. And especially if you're a team like Motherwell, who going into European football, the TV money that they can get, the travelling fans, if they get a good pool in the qualifying stages and then make it through to the group stages, that's massive. That's what really puts a footnote in Scottish football on the world. It makes us more known. It's a massive deal.
Aye. It's saying, like, the progression of Scottish football, especially with teams like Motherwell, who haven't been in Europe for a while, so it's a different kind of competition for them and a different draw. And like you said, that money just for getting into the Champions League is massive for clubs like Motherwell, and that would affect them so much. And there is teams that, with this whole cancellation, will be struggling, and that's something that's a shame, to be honest. But it's something that they can't hide from. Like, the lack of football means the lack of, obviously, ticket sales, prices on like food and drink, and entry fees, and then obviously there's players. Luckily, players have enough. I got to the point where they're probably financially sound, but there's players like the people in that coaching staff and backroom staff who will be struggling because they're not getting paid for some of the stuff that they've done. Because it's only really the players that are getting paid. I've not seen many news articles about how people like maybe a couple physios or even like quite backroom staff like kitmen. Some of them aren't getting paid.
They're having to take wage cuts. But go ahead.
Exactly.
I mean, like, going back to getting the money in from finishing within the table, getting European spots, progression in cups and that, other competition. Going back to an example like my club, Raith Rovers. If we're saying about an average 1,000 fans a week, spending on average about £10 a game, I think that's fair. Obviously, got a season ticket holders who won't be contributing that much to the game, but other times you have £15 a game for some people, paying like pies, juices, whatever. But 8 games remaining in the season, that's 80 grand they're missing out on.
All right.
That's a lot of money. Obviously there's been some crowdfunding thing going on, which is great. But you already see Hearts. Hearts are a well-established club in Scotland, a massive history. Scottish got semi-finalists this season, and they're the first club to admit that they're going to need to cut wages by 50%. And it just shows how much money they rely on coming in at the end of the season, even if it is parachute Scots. If they do get relegated, they need some sort of money in.
The thing is about Hearts is like you said, not only affects team at the higher up, but it affects teams that are lower down, like Hearts. Because if they end the season now and make it null and void, Hearts stay up, and that would be good for Hearts because they would get slightly more money for staying up. But however, that affects people like Dundee United.
It's not fair.
Hearts are getting, if they head the season now, Hearts are getting away with a really poor season this year. They have been poor all season, and they're getting away with it because of this virus, and that's taken away from lower down teams who might not get that opportunity.
Aye.
And also, same could be said for the Championship. Partick Thistle had a bad season. I know they're 2 points adrift now. Only lost one in the last 5. It isn't bad, but they've been poor all season. Queen of the South's the closest ones. They've been poor as well. Stranraer have been poor this season. They're 8 points adrift at the bottom. And then we've got League 2. You've got Brecon City, who have been absolutely woeful this season. Only recording 4 wins. So these teams are not having good seasons. Teams deserve to go up, and this probably isn't a very fair option on teams that want to go up. And I think just because it's Hearts and Partick Thistle, people think it's not fair for teams to come down. But in reality, maybe some teams do.
Well, these are big clubs. Obviously, Hearts, they've taken a massive hit in their fan base recently. A lot of their fans have been banned in that section for vile chants. Obviously, their position in the league has resulted in no fans coming, sort of boycotting, especially for the management. You look at Partick Thistle, who were a couple of seasons ago winning the Premiership, and have fallen away. Still a big club, but going on to the League One topic, if Partick Thistle were to remain in the league alongside Queen of the South, 2 points adrift, they don't deserve to be in the league. You have teams like Arbroath, who are a part-time team, who are sitting 10 points above Partick Thistle. And then you go into Wraith Rovers, who have got it's a very tight league. You've had Falkirk, who obviously had financial troubles and player issues, and they're now fighting back to get into a position where they think they suit. And Wraith are a big Fife team. Once they get back up, and if they get back into the Championship, think of the derby matches they can have. Obviously, they have East Fife, but Dunfermline away, bringing the fans from East End Park down to Starch Park, and even going away to Falkirk as well. It's huge revenue that these clubs can make. And obviously, like you were saying earlier, the League One is such a top 5, very close together. It's anyone's game.
Right, so I think we should sum this up. Oh, sorry, on you go.
Also, I just said, going through some of the news articles of previous time, 2 I've picked out of a lot. Gary McAllister, obviously he was Rangers assistant manager, has come out and said that he's insisting that Rangers won't concede the title to Celtic. First of all, that's a problem, is the fact that that's already a fight that Scottish FA are going to have to fight, because obviously Rangers they're not necessarily close to Celtic. However, there's still a few games where they could turn it around. So Gary McAllister's come out and said that they insist that they will not concede the title to Celtic.
I mean, Rangers are in no position to deny Celtic the title. They had a chance. They blew their chance. Let's be realistic. They had some good form, but they have been.
They beat Celtic, and then
2 wins in the last 5 games. It's not good enough.
Yeah, they beat Celtic and then went on a run of drawing and losing, and it's like that shows how. I think the thing about Rangers this year is they've been quite inconsistent. They could go through patches of utter brilliance, and you've seen it. You can see what Gerrard wants them to play, and then he goes from playing this exceptional football to just being sloppy and slow and lazy.
I think that the defence lets them down massively, in my opinion. They've got a good going forward, but they've got aging players in midfield and things like that.
I think the best thing that Rangers did so far was getting Enes Hadji on loan. The change
superb.
Before, like, their Europa League, they've been quite good in the Europa League this year, and I think the addition of Hadji in January helped them a lot, because he has been very good since he joined. Very
good future star there.
Yeah, and the other article that I picked out was an article by BBC Sport Scotland. It was Stuart Regan, who is the former Scottish FA chief, and he says that the season must be played. He says they can't end it at this point. He says he's just come out and said, he said, and I quote, "If we can agree to move the World Cup from the summer to the winter, then we're sure we can come up with a solution for the current challenges." So he's saying that obviously we've got the World Cup coming up next year. Not next year. We've got the Euros. Obviously, the Euros are coming up in the summer. So the Euros will be moved. The Euros have already been moved. So that's opened up the summer. Obviously, the players are going to have time off. They can't just finish the season, 2 weeks off, and then come back. So I think they're gonna have to start the season in October or November. I think that's what we're saying here.
The problem is, in a perfect world, playing the rest of the games is probably 100% the fairest way to do things. If the games can be played, they should be played. But looking at things, you're talking maybe another 3 or 4 weeks minimum in lockdown. Who knows how long? And then God knows how long after that we'll still remain in these social distancing measures.
Yeah.
So we're now into June. And a recent interview with Rovers chairman Bill Clark, he said that in June the Rovers will have 9 players, 2 of which are modern apprentices who are 16-year-olds each, and they have a goalkeeper in the squad. There's no way that they can complete the league. There's no way they can play, and a lot of other teams in that league, even in the Championship and League Two, all in the same position. Teams like Arbroath, Morton, Hull, Queen of the South, even Partick Thistle maybe. Though they might have pre-contracts, they might be wary about signing a month contract. They might want to get the next move sorted. So I can't see that being an option.
Well, what you could do, and this is just a statement. Obviously, we have the winter break, and if we've had this period of time where there's going to be a lot of players off and resting, you finish the league, take the break. You could then remove the winter break and continuously play the league through if we're starting late, obviously. Or what we could do is start the league at a regular time and start pre-season earlier, taking away the players' break, even because they've had this lockdown period with their families, which is, it may sound harsh, but if you take away their summer holiday in a way, you get pre-season started early, you can start the league again on time and keep the schedule going instead of having to change it to more of a German system.
I think the problem with that is, like you're saying, taking away their summer holiday. Like, yeah, they're off, but it's not a relaxing time, if you get what I mean.
Oh no, I get that.
There. And I think the main issue with starting the season, the next season, at the same time without postponing pushing it back slightly, is that, yeah, the players will get burnt out. There's no doubt about it, especially because we're likely to be on lockdown for at least another 3 weeks, I think, from now. And not only I will get off lockdown in 3 weeks, but that doesn't change the fact that there won't be football till, like Ross was saying, till probably June.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only way that it could continue, if they were going to continue it, was to start it, end it, so it should go June through to probably end of July, start of August, and then don't start the new season till.
You look at the NBA and other leagues elsewhere across the world. They're saying that they're going to finish their season and start their leagues later on than they usually would, and I can see that as being fair, as if they're going to continue it. However, Ross said earlier about social distancing. If you were to continue the league behind closed doors, so not allowing the fans in and make sure all the players are tested and they come back negative, then realistically you could finish the season. Then the TV companies can play the games on the telly, or the subscribed memberships such as Arab Zone for the United, or Rangers TV or Celtic TV can cover the costs, lowering the prices so players or fans can still watch the games from home as a form of making revenue. I think it's been introduced
that so the 3 o'clock rule on a Saturday still stands. So even if behind closed doors, no football games will be played on 3 o'clock on a Saturday. But I think what came in at the start of this whole pandemic thing that was kind of spread through Europe before it really hit us hard was, you can show multiple games at the same time. So say BT was covering it, BT could show, a 12 o'clock game on a Saturday in Premiership, League 1, League 2, the Championship, and have multiple games going. It's an idea, but it's obviously not ideal for fans.
There was an idea put forward down in England for clubs to play 2 games a weekend, so they play Saturday and Sunday. That's too much.
You wouldn't get the same kind of calibre.
That's what I'm saying, because you would play Saturday, Sunday, then you train Monday, Tuesday, you get off Wednesday off, and then you'd be training. You would never catch a break. And like obviously, what we have to remember at the end of the day, they're super athletes, footballers. Let's be honest.
Mhm.
However, they're not. They're human. They're human. They need the break as much as we do.
Well, what you could do, they were arguing this about European football because Rangers were kicking up a fuss about their pitch not being in good condition to play in Europe, separating the days between playing a league game during the week and the league game during the weekend. Either what you could do is take away a training session on the day before or after, preferably after your week game, so you play a Wednesday. And
what
then
I was saying, obviously there's slight logistical problems, but what you can do is if a club plays on a Saturday, then they can play on the Tuesday. And you see, so you play 2 games a week essentially. However, it's not in a row, so you can play Saturday and Tuesday, and then you play Sunday and Wednesday, and then you play the Wednesday, you'd play on the Saturday. If you get what I mean. So you could play 2 games a week. At the end of the day, because obviously there is weeks where they do that, and obviously that is that could put strain on their bodies. However, it's not a strain, and it's putting a Saturday and Sunday like someone put forward down at the FA.
It would not make sense to do a Saturday and Sunday like you're saying. I think there is methods around playing 2 games in a week. I think you could play, like you're saying, a Wednesday and a Saturday, or a Wednesday and a Sunday, depending on what teams you're playing.
Monday and Friday.
I mean, obviously we do have our Friday games. Scottish Championship play a Friday game that's put on BBC Scotland. I think BBC Scotland's programme has the options to put more Scottish football on the telly, a Saturday and Sunday. Although the TV money is split between Sky and BT, there's no Championship games played on a Saturday on the telly. Which, I mean, the only games you would get is the Dundee Derby. If you were to put Dundee United Ayr or Ayr Inverness on a Saturday and Dundee United versus, I don't know, Morton on a Friday, you'd get more people watching the football. Still be more revenue being made.
Yeah, that would make more money for
and then you can put them on a Sunday as well, so you can play the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, spread the games out.
Yeah.
And then change them around per week. So if you're playing on a Sunday, if you're playing on the Friday, you play on a Sunday. If you're playing on a Sunday, you play on the Friday, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right, so all interesting topics, but I think we could probably talk about this further. So maybe moving on might be a good idea. The next option that we've got written down as the leagues are considering is just leaving the leagues as they are. So that would mean in Premiership Celtic would be confirmed champions. Hearts would be relegated. Dundee United being promoted. Partick Thistle going down to the Championship. Raith Rovers winning League One. Stranraer being relegated. And Cove Rangers being crowned champions of League Two. I think interestingly, before we start the conversation, is that Pro Rangers, after an agreement with all the teams in the Highland League, Pro Rangers were crowned champions of the Highland League. So it shows that it can be done. It's not necessarily under the slightly different governing body for the high and low leagues, but they have already been crowned champions. So there's a claim that why not do that for the rest of the leagues, and teams have to go on with it.
I think. Go ahead.
I think the problem with that is, right, there's always a chance, and I'm not trying to obviously say that it's going to happen, but there's a chance that teams like Hearts could have turned it around. Because Hamilton are only 4 points above them.
Yeah.
So they're 6 points or something like that. They're not far off. So there's always a chance that Hearts could have made it back. I mean, they were in a terrible run of form. I think they lost. I think they lost all the last 5 games towards the.
Last 5 games for Hearts was a loss, a draw, a win, a draw, and a loss. Hamilton Academical coming in a bit of form, loss, draw, win, win.
Yeah. So it's like that's the problem. Football, it's the most unpredictable game because you never know what's going to happen. So there's always a chance that clubs like Hearts or Hamilton could have got up. Even Rangers, Celtic could have went on a run of losing 5 games in 5. You don't know.
Unlikely, but you're right.
It's unlikely. It's unlikely, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it could happen. So it's unfair to kind of rule out any possibility. You know what I mean?
And also, the other difficult thing with this is then the idea of playoffs. So you've got Hamilton, if the league was to finish now, would be sitting in the relegation playoff zone. with Inverness, Dundee, and Ayr in the Championship, how would these games get played? Obviously, you could just choose to scrap the playoff, which has been an idea. But one player game that has to happen, if relegation is going to happen, is the pyramid scheme from the Highland Lowland League up to League Two. So you've got Brora, and I'm not sure who's top of the Lowland League.
You've got Kelty Hearts and Bonnyrigg, who are top of. Well, I think Kelty Hearts are top of the Lowland League. But the thing is, Bonnyrigg Rose don't agree necessarily with the given the promotion straight away, because obviously they're in a title race. They're 6 points apart. Bonnyrigg have got a game in hand, and we're due to play Kelty Hearts. They're not simply going to give it up, saying, right, well, there's always next season.
Yeah. So obviously that's quite tough at 6 points. With that game in hand, as you say, and that's a real question, and that's a real problem, because that game has to be played. And Brecon City, I think to relegate Brecon City would be ridiculous, because I know relegations could happen, but in the history of this Highland Lowland League pyramid system, the bottom team in League Two has been able to save its bacon. I know a few years ago, Kirkby did it on a penalty shootout against East Kilbride. So Brecon should be allowed that chance to play for their survival, even though they've been rubbish all season. But that game has to be played, and that's a problem, because that we could not be seeing football till June, July, and that's when the Betfred Cup kind of starts again, which is a bad issue.
I agree. It's not falling into place with the timing and things like that, especially with teams expected to come up and down. Obviously, with Brora being promoted or given that playoff position, obviously the Lowland and the Highland Leagues meet to play for that second place position. Brecon City, you could fairly say that they're, without a doubt, down and out. They've got no chance of coming back in League Two. Do then Bonnyrigg or Kelty Hearts then admit that they can't exactly just give it up and say, because it's very tight, that league. The Lowland League is like a League One. It's very tight in between the teams. Anyone can come back at any time. A lot of talented young clubs coming through. Yeah. It's difficult to say, and I think that with other leagues it's a lot simpler.
Yeah.
No, I think
sorry. There you go.
The worst part is the teams that you mentioned earlier, teams that are part-time, people who aren't committed to full-time football, who are doing well, and to get their season cut short, I think it's not good for morale in teams as well, especially for teams who are starting to come out a bit of form and maybe are going to start pushing to go further up, or teams that were starting to feel up. That's just going to totally it's cutting the legs out from underneath them. I think if you just stop it now.
Yeah, because you see, obviously, Kelty Hearts, I think everyone knows about the massive investment went into Kelty Hearts. Barry Ferguson, his manager, some players who could easily play, Nathan Austin, that could easily play in the Championship. Players like that. So they're sitting top, but then Bonnyrigg goes, maybe not equal, but a substantial investment into them, and get a lot of players in, and they're really building for the future. And just scrapping the league without it being played to its conclusion could lead to players saying, "Nah, screw this, I'm off." And that just ruins the hard work the Bonnyrigg have put in. We've seen them on the telly a few times last season, and they were excellent. So it would be a bit harsh on them, I think, not to give them a chance at least. But that's just the way it is, I suppose.
It's a tough situation in every aspect of the game.
100%.
No matter what you pick, someone's going to complain.
Someone's going to be left off.
The fact.
And speaking about teams going up, the third and final option we've got here is a bit more radical of an option, and that is to refigure the league. So this includes promoting the top two teams in every league, no relegation. So we'd end up, and then so the top of the Lowland League gets promoted to League Two, and the top of the Highland League gets promoted to League Two. So we'd end up with a 14-team Premiership. So the Premiership as it stands, plus Dundee United and Inverness. The Championship would then be made of Dundee, Ayr, Dufferin, Arbroath, Morton, Fallow, Queen of South Partick Thistle, Raith Rovers, Falkirk. League One would then be made of Airdrie, Montrose, East Fife, Barton, Clyde, Peterhead, Forfar, Stranraer, Cove and Edinburgh City. And then Scottish League 2 were then made of Elgin, Cowdenbeath, Queen's Park, Stirling, Annan, Sanesbury, Albion, Brecon, Brora and Kelly Harsh.
I like the concept of reforming leagues. I'm all for it. I don't think because of a virus they should reform the leagues. I think it's a good start. Like you say, extending it. I think taking it more of an English approach where we remove this playoff system, which definitely weakens the chances of. So, for example, Dundee United, every season have been in the playoff position. They've had to play 4 or 5 games in a row, and then play against a Premiership team who have had
Saturday, Tuesday,
3 weeks.
Saturday, Tuesday.
Exactly, have 3 weeks rest. You're thinking you're going up against it. You know, it's designed to keep you down. In my opinion, the SFA have done that designed to keep you down there. I agree. I think that there should be a playoff position for maybe second to get that automatic promotion place. I'm not sure, and then go straight up. I'm not sure though. I do agree that there should be reforms. This is a good gateway, but I don't think it should stay this way. If we are, for me, I'd take even more of an extreme approach and reform into 2 leagues, combining League 1 and League 2 and the Championship and the Prem, but making it like
the problem with
21,
doing
21.
that is, so if you did that, you'd have Queen and South of Partick Thistle then in a Premiership, and we've just argued that they're probably not even fit to be in a Championship. Which means so there's teams like Wraith Rovers who are sitting top of the league playing well. They've already beaten Partick this season. They should be in the Championship, and then so they're missing out on playing the likes of Celtic and Rangers, Dundee United, Hearts, on this reform in the league.
Going from this season onwards, obviously Wraith being promoted to the Championship, combining the Championship then with the Premier League, you'd have this sort of like a Barclays Premier League or like the Championship in England. You'd have this massive league where you've got your mid-table clubs who are still bringing in good income, playing against loads of various teams, getting wins, getting TV money from playing teams, say for example Celtic Rangers, which would massively help teams like Queen of the South or Wraith or Partick. It provides more games in the season. Again, it's up for debate. I'm not sure if it's a good method for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
To put into the point, you're saying obviously in the Premier League down in England, there's 20 teams. In the Scottish Premier League, there's 8?
12.
12. Sorry, 12. My apologies. 12. So you could add 8 onto that and make a bigger league. But the difference is obviously with Scottish football, you play every team more than twice. Obviously in the Premier League they play everyone twice, so that's why it's harder to cancel the Premier League when you've not played a certain team again. Whereas in the Scottish football, you've already played everyone at least twice before this point.
This has been kicked around a few times. When the introduction of the SPFL came in, they spoke about a 20-team league, and the concern was, you've got teams like Livingston, Kilmarnock, St Mirren, who are so obviously you only get the gate money when you're playing at home. So if you're playing away, you don't get anything. So these teams are playing Celtic home twice, Rangers home twice. Hibs have got 2 home games against Hearts, and you've got other derbies in there as well. If we increase the league to 20, as you say, they'd be getting 1, so like half the revenue still getting cut. Because Hearts, instead of playing Celtic at home, they're going to end up playing, I don't know, Ayr at home. And the gate money of that is going to be nowhere as close.
I understand what you're coming from. I do. I think there should be a reform in the way that the money is distributed. However, taking it from a smaller club's perspective, it's good for teams like Hearts to get an away day at Celtic or a home game with Celtic. But how good is it for a team like Ayr playing against Hearts or an Arbroath playing against Celtic? That's massive for those clubs.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Drawing in massive revenue. So it counterbalances when you think about it. These clubs rely on this kind of money coming in. It could save an entire clubs from going under.
Definitely.
Yeah, it just shows the massive distance between clubs like Celtic and clubs like Ayr.
Yeah.
how games like that affect, because a Celtic Ayr game at Parkhead, it won't be that packed. But when Celtic go to Ayr, you would struggle with it. It'd probably sell out really quickly, and then you'd have people outside the ground anyway, who like the total atmosphere of those games and the attendance would be smashed. Because it's, but the problem is, the novelty would wear off. It's like if Ayr played Celtic in the cup, that's once. However, when you play in the league, that's 3 confirmed dates at least playing against these teams. So that's the 3 big paydays for one team.
I mean, Dun United, right? We had this spell where we had to play Celtic 4 times in a row because we had them in the league, we had them in 2 cups, we had them in the Scottish Cup semis or the quarters, and we had them in the League Cup final. We had to play a replay in our Scottish Cup game. Lost in the final. I think we lost all our games except for our replay. Which, I mean, we made an unreal amount of money because we were filling the stadium every single time. But is it fair to then say the novelty wears off? You think Celtic, we use Celtic versus Ayr, for example. Celtic come down to Somerset Park. You've got to look at programme revenue, scarves, the money they'll be making from pies, all the drinks, ticket money, just the atmosphere itself. You get them 3 times in a row. Ayr are on cloud 9. Yeah, they may get a fucking hiding. It happens. But
yeah, it'd be a spectacle. And the thing is, in games like that, you could also do charitable stuff as well. Like at halftime, bring in a couple of fans on to do crossbar challenges and stuff to raise money for stuff and stuff like that. Like in those games, you can do little like festival kind of things, and that will obviously increase even more money for the club. You could we could take a percentage to the club and then a percentage to charity, and it's like that helps as well.
But I think at the end of the day, to refigure the league that drastically, like to add 8 teams, we've talked about adding 2 teams. That's the kind of proposed idea. But to add 8 teams is something that would have to go to a vote to the current Premiership clubs, and no way do I see any of them letting go of their 2 big paydays at home to Celtic and Rangers. I don't see it happening.
Yeah. It's kind of stubbornness at the end of the day.
It's quite
totally.
It's a self-statute.
When the new playoff system came in, it was totally Premiership based. 11th place in the Premiership playing 2 games to stay up, whereas you could have the 4th team in the Championship is then playing 6 games to get up, which is a bit miffed, in my opinion. But yeah. Anyway, we could probably speak about refiguring the leagues and what to do with that until we're blue in the face. But maybe we move on to something a bit different. One of the things I've got written down here. Oh, on you go.
Oh, I just a wee, obviously, because we've been talking a lot about this COVID-19 and stuff, and I just got a quick, it's more of a question to you guys, and it's opinion based. Who do you think, in opinion or by stats, was the best Scottish footballer to have ever graced? It's a difficult question.
To have graced the game, right, Ross, I'll let you answer that one first, mate.
I've got my personal opinion, and mine is kind of clouded by a wee bit of bias. However, he does back it up. But Ross, you may go first.
I think probably if you're talking Scottish players of all time, yeah.
Yeah, of all time.
I think you've got to say Kenny Dalglish. I think he was good in the Scottish League, and then when he went into Liverpool, I think he just had a different level.
He set the template for Scottish football.
And also, you see some of the things, we've not seen a player like that in generations, man. You've got current players, we're foaming at the mouth at players like Joe McGinn and Scott McTominay coming through, Andrew Robertson, who right now his performances for Scotland leave a lot to be desired. But Kenny Dalglish was fantastic, and I don't think there's been a better player than him.
The difference between Kenny Dalglish, players like you're saying, John McGinn and stuff, is Kenny Dalglish, like Scottish players nowadays, like John McGinn, he's getting attention from Villa fans, who he obviously plays club football for, and Scottish fans. Whereas Kenny Dalglish, it was Liverpool fans, Scottish fans, and then the whole world, essentially. Fans from all over the place were paying attention to this footballer because he was different.
I mean,
and
I've got a counter argument to it. Obviously Kenny Dalglish. I can't really argue is one of the best football players of all time for coming from Scotland, an absolute icon down in Liverpool. However, you got to think Archie Gemmill. I don't know if you know who that is. He's before our time, right? He's probably scored the greatest goal in the World Cup, arguably, right? Won the European Cup and won 3 Premier League titles down south. Banging in goals, you know, fantastic playmaker, things like that. You can then argue, is he up there one of the best? Obviously, he is definitely up there one of the best. You look at the different time periods. It's you got Ali McCoy, Alex Ferguson as well, Gordon Strachan.
I could put another one in. Dennis Law.
Aye, Dennis Law. Yeah.
One Ballon d'Or.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that, isn't it? Yeah.
He was the first Scotsman to win the Ballon d'Or.
Only, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the only.
Did Dalglish win it?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I can't remember. I mean, obviously, you can now argue as well that you've got like Andrew Robertson's up there with a good, not one of the best just yet. But
I think in terms of nowadays, Andrew Robertson, he set the bar for Scottish football. Like, what he's progressed from, and like you were saying, Ross, his Scottish performances haven't been that good. But you cannot be that good, but then he performs on a weekly basis for Liverpool. And obviously, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I watch every game, and sometimes you don't see him, but you still notice like what he's doing.
Andrew Robertson. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm done.
I was going to say, Andrew Robertson, obviously, he's Champions League winner and that. He's obviously a fantastic player. He's brilliant for Liverpool. The problem I have with Andrew Robertson is when he comes and plays for Scotland, I think he still thinks that he's playing with players that are probably the best players in the world. He comes in and he's balling up and down the left-hand side as he does. But what you don't see so often for Liverpool is him coming back the way. Because you don't need to. He doesn't need to come back the way. And I think, especially in the qualifying campaign,
he's got Virgil van Dijk behind him.
I think he admitted it to himself that he wasn't good enough in the qualifying campaign. As a captain, he should have been there putting it. And to be a world class player, I think you've got to show that you're world class for your country. Gareth Bale, who was probably the biggest player in the recent few years for Wales, he showed that he was brilliant at Tottenham, brilliant at Real Madrid. But when he went to the Wales national team, he was still exceptional. And I think that's a level that
I think there's a different calibre though of players from Scotland to Wales. Now, fair enough, you can argue that we have got some cracking players at Scotland, and you can't argue with that. I mean, Andy Robertson's a Champions League winner, but Wales, they've got quite a lot of depth. I mean, they've got Aaron Ramsey, it's another player, Daniel James as well.
Harry Wilson.
Harry Wilson, banging free kicks.
Brandon Williams is obviously coming through as well from United. He's Welsh.
Exactly.
I think you've got to remember. I think you've got to remember that the difference between Real Madrid and the Wales squad was still massive.
Yeah.
Especially the team that Gareth Bale first went into. Like Ronaldo, Cruz, the treble Champions League winning sides. That's who he was playing with week to week, and he'd come to Wales and he'd still be fantastic. I think John McGinn, he's reaching that level. I think he's consistent for Aston Villa, and I think the few games there he's good for Scotland.
John McGinn is limited because of his at Aston Villa. I think in the summer he's definitely probably going to earn himself a move. Probably not to like a team like City or like obviously United were interested in him. Leicester could probably be a team.
I'd see him and James Maddison doing well in the middle.
Obviously, but James Maddison is probably going to live for United. But I think John McGinn, he's going to earn himself a move to probably a top 6. He could join, but I could see him at Spurs, to be honest.
I wouldn't even restrain himself to playing in England, obviously.
No, like he's saying he could go abroad, and I think he's only limited to so long because he's playing for Aston Villa. He's Aston Villa's best player. probably actually him or Grealish. Obviously, Grealish is doing really well as well, but he's up there. So I think he is limited, like Grealish, until he moves away. And then when he moves away, he can...
It's a stepping stone, isn't it? It's like when Andy Robertson moved. You know, he went from place to place. He went from United to Hull and then to Liverpool.
Everyone said when he went to Liverpool that he was mental. He's not going to get played. He was just going to be a backup. And look at him now.
Exactly. You've got John McGinn, who has already proved at Hibs and at Aston Villa playing at top two levels in British football.
And at Scotland, like he's been Scotland's best player. He in terms of Scottish international performances, John McGinn's the best player. He is. In terms of performances.
Can't really argue. I can't really argue with it. I think that he's a maestro in the making, and I think, yeah, he'd suit well in a Leicester or a Tottenham, because obviously at Tottenham no longer have Eriksen. I think if you put him in, I don't know, a Leverkusen kit, or you put him in a Inter Milan kit,
because I think he'd suit Mönchengladbach's type of play.
I mean,
especially because obviously they've been really good this year in Mönchengladbach.
Yeah, they kind of faded away.
Leipzig. There's like teams like Leipzig and Marseille and.
I think a Leipzig would be good because they're quite fast attacking football. And John McGinn's a fast attacking player, good passing football. That's what Leipzig do, and I think he's got potential.
I can also confirm. I've been looking things up. Dennis Law, obviously, he won the Ballon d'Or. Jimmy Johnson, when he played for Celtic in 1967, he came third. In 1983, Kenny Dalglish came second, beaten out by Michel Platini.
Some competition, like holy shit.
Yeah, some of them it's mental. But yeah, so Dennis Law's the only Scottish player to win the Ballon d'Or.
But if you look at that season that Dalglish came second, he also won PFA Player of the Year and Footballer of the Year. And 4-4-2 named Dalglish the greatest striker in post-war British football.
Exactly. The year Jimmy Johnson came third, he was beaten out by Bobby Charlton, probably one of the best English players to probably ever graced or worn an England shirt, and Florian Albert, who was he was a Hungarian player. He was a good player.
I mean, you've got serious competition. I mean, Scottish football.
He's a little heads up. I just went and had a look. He obviously the person who beat out Jimmy Johnson. He played for one team, Ferencváros. He played 351 games, scored 256.
It's not bad stats, not bad numbers.
And it looks like he only played for them for like 6 years. So
I think that's a respectable numbers. However, before we fall down the rabbit hole into who's the best player in the world, blah blah blah, I think that'll wrap it up for this first episode of the Mitre Aff the Puss podcast. Thank you very much for listening.
Talk all day.
You can follow us on our YouTube channel, which will be currently under It's Greg JW or X Greg J Williamson, but it could be moved to its own independent channel. You may also follow us on SoundCloud, and we will try and get onto the Apple Podcast Store. But for now, from me, I'll see you later, and from the boys,
see you later. Catches.
All right.